Okay, I now make it 7:30. Thank you so much for those who have made their way down to the seats. Please, if you can allow some of our older residents to find a seat ahead of you. There's also seats from the sides, from the stalls, that will be available. Okay. And there's a couple of seats at the front as well. Okay, welcome to the Chiswick Area Forum. I am Councillor Ron Mushiso. I've been a councillor for the last 4 years, going up to 5 years, so most of you know of who we are. But since the last meeting, we've had 3 new councillors, and I would like to take a moment to introduce them to you and to the people watching at home. The first one is Amy Croft, who's been elected Chiswick Riverside for the Labour Party. Amy, do you mind saying a few words of introductions?
Yes, I think we've just turned it off now. Ward Councillor for Chiswick Riverside. Now it's on. Oh, well, now it's on. Sorry, can you hear me now? My name's Amy Croft. I'm a Ward Councillor for Chiswick Riverside, representing the Labour Party. Hi.
Thank you. We've also got Jack Elmsley, who was elected in Chiswick Homefields for the Conservative Party.
I feel like we're just repeating Ron. I'm Jack Elmsley. I'm the new councillor for Chiswick Homefields, representing the Conservative Party. Hello.
And then I will allow, thank you. Okay, just to give you some time to talk for yourself, I'll introduce Peter Thompson.
I feel like a bit of a fraud being introduced as a new councillor. I was a councillor in Turnham Green from 1998 to 2014, and then had 4 years off for good behaviour, and I got re-elected in May last year, this time representing Chiswick Riverside with Amy and Gabriella. Thank you. Okay, as you're aware, we've changed things slightly in terms of the Area Forum. I'm really grateful for the attendance today. You've spoken to many storeholders today already and hopefully received some useful information and advice. And it's now just after 7:30, so the formal part of the meeting will commence. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and will be made available for viewing Hounslow Council YouTube page in the coming days. So the way the meeting works is that I will be running the meeting, inviting people to speak. I have already received some emails of indications of people wanting to speak, but that is not exclusive and is not also guaranteed. If that is the case that we do not answer your question, you will find there is a sheet of paper available to some of you. It says on the top of it, Chiswick Area Forum, open forum issues to be raised. If you can fill in a question there in anticipation that I might not capture your eye, okay? If you do that, then you can always pass it on to Afsal. Afsal, do you mind standing up? And Afsal will collect those bits of information and relay it over to the chair, and I can divvy it up to the individual councillors or officers where I see appropriate. So please be aware that every single question, if you have a question, if we don't answer it on the floor, we will respond to you in writing. So thank you for that. Obviously, there are some emotive issues today on the agenda, and I will endeavour to allow as many of us to speak tonight. But with that in mind, I'll ask members of the public to wait their turn, not to interrupt people when they're talking, or comment during their contributions. We have a large number of people present, as you can see, and it may, of course, not be possible for everyone to have their questions heard. Therefore, the open forum will be available, and of course, like I've said before, there'll be a written part should you miss out on speaking. We'll do things slightly differently in that towards the end of the agenda, where we're talking about transport update, we will put that in two parts. The first part where we're lucky to have Councillor Catherine Dunn here alongside Jefferson, who is the transport officer. They will answer specific questions on South Chiswick in the first part, but then in the second part, they will return for an open forum. Okay? So I hope that's clear. Have I missed anything else? Okay, so without further ado, I'm sure you've heard enough from me already. We will go on to we'll go on to declarations of interest first. Any declaration of interests? Okay. Absence? No. Everything's good? Okay, so we'll move on to item 1. Okay, we can then move on to item 1. I'll introduce representatives from Hounslow Highways. Let's please not take too long introducing who you are. Let's try and get to the nuts and bolts of the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Hurley, Business and Operations Manager for Hounslow Highways.
And I'm Sabil Khan. I represent the council. I'm the client manager, the head of highways, PFI.
Tim Hurley.
Sabil.
Would you? Okay.
Okay, Tim, do you mind getting us underway with your work program update, please?
Thank you. So I was asked to put some slides together on the maintenance program for Hounslow Highways and some other topics that came up, especially cleansing and leafing, which we know is an issue, particularly this time of the year and particularly in Chiswick. So just talk about essentially what our mantra is. So Hounslow Highways have been working with Hounslow Council since 2013 as part of a 25-year PFI contract. We have core duties, and essentially it's legal and contractual. A lot of it falls under the various acts, such as the Highways Act, but ultimately we're here to keep the network safe. So everything we do is along those lines. That's split into various items. A key one there is minimising the number of third-party claims, which would be a trip, a slip by any resident. Sorry.
No, they will not be standing up because they can't reach the microphone, I'm afraid. If you can't hear... Okay, we're not standing up. Sorry, Tim, continue.
Okay. So minimising third-party claims, that's ensuring that we do everything we can to ensure that there is no incident, accident, trip on the network. We do this through various means, but the key point is a firm asset management process. So that's not just waiting for a defect to appear before we repair it, it's ensuring that we have a program of safety inspections and surveys through the year to understand what the network's looking like now and what it's going to look like in the next 2, 3, 4 years. A key part of asset management is making sure that we intervene at the right time. Essentially, it's better, it's cheaper, and actually it's less disruptive if you intervene and do some works on a highway before it fails. There's also the identification of defects on the network, so we have safety inspections, which doubled when we took over the network in 2013 to ensure that every road, footway is inspected, walked by a qualified highways inspector either every month, quarter, 6 monthly or annually. Generally, strategic roads would be monthly, residential roads would fall under the quarterly and annually. We do this through recording the data. So in the old days, it was an inspector with a DIM book, a paper book, writing things down. We then go back into the office and transfer that. Now everything's electronic, so that when a defect is raised, it goes straight into the system with a measure and with a photo so that we can prioritise that and try and intervene as quickly as we can. And then the other key thing there is intervening when other people are on the network. And what we know, there's always utility works, a lot more actually, since COVID, on the network. So they could be putting in things like broadband, BT, British Gas. Thames Water are starting to do a lot of work on their SUDS program to address issues in terms of water capacity to prevent flooding. So it's working with those promoters because they're doing the job that they need to do, but making sure that when they do it promptly, they do it safely, and that they leave the network in a good condition. Aside from that, there's always a lot of development on the network, so that's working with skip scaffold companies. Sorry, I'm working on the wrong thing. There you go. So made some maintenance last year. So this is the schemes that we did in Chiswick. Essentially, you've got 13 schemes there. So these were identified from our surveys, which are driven and walked, where we look at what the survey looked like last year for that road, what it looks like now. Every survey where it identifies a road that appears to be critical or in need of intervention is then walked by a team of engineers, and then actually by myself as we go through the year to make sure that we're making the right investment decisions. We're working on the 2023 programme, so we've done all the surveys. We've identified 67 schemes across the borough where we need to go in and essentially resurface a footway or a carriageway. A quick look at that identifies around 9 of those roads are in the Chiswick area. There was a separate set of works, so aside from the work that we did last year, we identified 19 kilometres with the council of generally footways but some carriageways which were adopted but not treated within our project. So that 19 kilometres has now been brought in and it's part of Hounslow Highway's responsibility, fence to fence for everything, from trees to lighting to cleansing. So the good thing there is we inspected those roads to make sure that they were up to grade. We identified those 5 footways in Chiswick that needed to be done, and that was by the end of October. There was also further works undertaken the year before. We also had the plot hole pledge, so this was a council-funded pledge, to look at roads which probably didn't appear on the resurfacing programme, but where it's felt that there was small levels of potholes or general deterioration that the residents wanted done. So these are roads within Chiswick that were done under that programme. It's been fantastic because it's helped bring the network even better into a good position, and the roads were informed in discussion with Hounslow Council. We then also have Cycleway 9, so this is a big TfL-funded scheme, which I know Jefferson's talking on later. It's divided into key sections, and we're currently working on 3B. We do appreciate that Cycleway 9 is quite emotive, and the works can be disruptive, but it's a tremendous piece of work in terms of bringing connections together and encouraging how people move and flow. I did say it was emotive. Routine safety inspections. So, when I talked about the safety inspections on the network on a monthly, annual, quarterly basis, this is just a quick table to show how defects appear and how they're identified. So as many of you will know, we have the Fix My Street site where residents can go in either through the app or through the website and report an issue or a defect. That will then result in one of our safety inspectors going out and determining if inspection is required. We're actually looking at the number of defects we raised in 2021, so there's 7,308 there. We actually found that, sorry, get this right, 7,308 were raised through routine safety inspections. So not by somebody complaining, but by our safety inspector undertaking their routine duty and against our investigation levels in the safety manual saying work needed to be done. On top of that, another 1,200 were identified by residents going into Fix My Street and raising a query with us. And that's a good thing. So a lot of these roads are inspected on an annual basis. Deterioration can appear in that period, so it is good if residents do go in and let us know if they think that intervention is required on a road. It doesn't always mean that we do work, but it doesn't mean that we've got extra sets of eyes on the network helping us understand where the priorities should be.
Tim, can I interrupt you there? I think we have an idea of what Hounslow Highways does, so we need to find, trying to close it off if we can, so because questions to ask from the audience. Yeah.
Indulge me for 3 more minutes? 2. Fine. Very quickly, happily share these slides. I put them on our website. This is the number of inquiries we deal with every year. Beginning of the contract was around 36,000. You can see it's gone up and up and up every year. Starting to see a dip now. Analysis shows that this is a COVID dip. So during COVID, a lot more people were at home. We actually saw a huge spike in the number of inquiries coming through. And this is in all areas. That's just the split of where things come through. 50% of pretty much everything we get is fly tipping. So obviously for us, that's a big burden and challenge that we have to work through. And this is looking at that graph earlier by ward. Essentially, we saw a massive drop, as we said, in the last year. generally in the central area, generally in relation to fly tipping. Interestingly, in the eastern wards, which is Homefields, Riverside and Turner Green, we actually saw an increase over that period, not generally relating to cleansing. Weeding has been an emotive issue, and I thank everyone for bearing with us as we've gone through it. We have put an additional 30 operatives on the network in the last 3 months to help deal with weeding. We feel that's making an impact, but it's an ongoing challenge that we work on. We are glyphosate free, so a lot of our work has been on finding innovations that will help us deal with the weed issue. And the weed issue isn't just short-term in terms of aesthetics, it has a long-term impact on the deterioration of the footway and the carriageway. So that's why it's important for us to try and find the right treatment for it. Graffiti inquiries has gone up, so especially on the A4, as people will know. So it's just a slide to show where the kind of challenges are for Hounslow Highways, but I'll skip through. And leafing is something quite pertinent right now. We've learned lessons from leafing. We brought leafing in-house rather than with an external subcontractor about 2 years ago. And essentially mechanisation is the way that we do it now. So there are 4 dedicated teams, there's 20 operatives. There is 5 mechanical sweepers, 3 of them heavy on the network, working in conjunction with parking suspensions to try and clear the leaves. So leaf fall is a seasonal issue. It is actually happening earlier now. It happens in the summer as the trees are shedding their leaves due to the lack of water, and then again in the winter. So again, you would have seen our operatives on the network, and hopefully you'll see that they're working through it as quickly as they can. If you'd like more information on leafing, it's on our website. Essentially, this shows the strategic side of the leafing program, which was through October and November. We concentrated on the strategic roads, which includes Chiswick High Road and the cycle lanes. And as we move into mid-November, most of our resources now moving onto the residential roads. So there is a plan we work to. There is also a program on the website of the core roads which are on that program. But if you feel that something isn't there and it should be, I urge you to report it on Fix My Street. We do inform the current and next year program based upon what's reported through to us. So please do report it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. I'm afraid if you want to see more information, as you've rightly directed, there are details on the website that will be available. Okay, I'll take some questions from the floor. I've also got Tim Mack, who wants to say something first. Tim, come on forward.
Yeah, of course.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand
Tim, there is a microphone.
and try to project onto Tim.
No, there's a microphone.
Oh, crikey. I hope I can make this work. I should say, I actually asked to speak at the last meeting that was understandably cancelled on the subject of flooding strategy, which hopefully I'll show why that's so relevant. And I've got a short introduction followed by 5 short requests. So I'm talking flooding, sewage, buildings and construction. I'm Tim Mack of Riverside Ward. In July 21, Hounslow had rainfall equivalent to almost a month's worth in some locations across London. Lately, of course, we've seen much more excess rain, more flooding, more planning applications, more planning permission for more building, including below ground. More concreting, including front gardens and rear gardens, less displacement and soak away, more rivers and basements of sewage. Briefly, brace yourselves for more. In August 22, Chiswick W4 reported some shops in Chiswick High Road were forced to close and a number of basements were flooded as drains were unable to cope with excess water, affecting footpaths, roads, cycleways, etc. This month, the Chiswick calendar reported heavy rain over recent days has seen Thames Water discharge huge quantities of sewage with stormwater into the River Thames. Reports many thousands of homes are now at risk from sewage floods. Recent rainfall overwhelms sewers, giving water companies the green light to release more sewage into our rivers. So I talked about 5 actions. Thank you, Chair. to ask that we think global and act local. And if you need to ask why now and why I asked for the last meeting, it was because of the Hounslow flooding strategy that is updated every 6 years, and the new one's just been published. I wanted to talk at the last meeting because the consultation was in May, June of this year. And I wanted to ask that the flooding strategy comes to this meeting as soon as possible. That we plan to plant and not to build, so we have sustainable urban drainage, meadows, wetlands and trees to cope with the downfall. To ask what would we be doing differently now if we'd known now if we knew now what we'd known 30 years ago.
Good, Tim.
Okay.
Thank you. That's it, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank I'm not sure if, one second, I'm not sure if there is a question there, but can you respond in terms of the strategy, the flooding strategy that is coming?
Sorry. The flooding strategy, I think is more of a council one, but let me talk briefly about flooding, because it does affect everyone here and obviously affects us, because we get the calls. So unfortunately, climate change appears to be having a number of effects. We're seeing, dry summers, we all know that, and the rainfall in the last couple of months has been extensive and has pushed us to capacity. We do try and tweet out what we're doing, but there is an element of the amount of flooding, the amount of rainfall that we've seen, we have to let the drainage system do what it does, and that's just on the immediate. We do have teams on hand. We have extra teams on hand now, because we predict that we need to go and attend emergency flooding situations. And we also need to ensure that when we're cleansing, we try and clear the leaves off the gully grates, because that can be an issue as well. But I think the long-term plan is working in conjunction with the Council in Thames Water, their SUDS programme, which is about major investment, millions of pounds of investment to upgrade the infrastructure below ground. Because it really is about the capacity that the drainage system can take. And we'll do what we can, but essentially it just takes time for it to drain through to the gully.
Thank you, Tim. We've got Ruth.
Thank you. Hello, Tim. Thank you very much. Could you let us know what the depth is for a pothole that is considered dangerous? Because as you know, for cycling, it's much more dangerous than for driving, especially with SUVs. Thank you.
I'll need to familiarise myself, and it should be on our website, but generally the intervention level on a residential road for a pothole on a footway is 25 millimetres and 75 metres on a carriageway. On something like Chiswick High Road, that changes to around 20 millimetres on a footway and 50 millimetres on a carriageway. There is there are different levels of intervention. So for example, if you imagine a pedestrian crossing, that makes it more of a priority, so the intervention level changes there. So it really does depend upon where the pothole is and what's around it. Is there a school around it, a hospital? So even though we have these guidance levels, that will change when we do things, because it changes the importance of it.
I didn't see Cavendish Road on your list, and I know that Tim Mack will also be concerned about that, because that's deeply potholed. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here at the front. The lady with glasses. No, just behind you. You go next.
Hi. Hounslow decided to ignore all EU guidelines, UK guidelines, US guidelines, and Australia guidelines on what a safe bi-directional cycle lane is by putting it on Chiswick High Road with multiple intersections instead of on the A4 or other place. While doing that,
Madam.
while ignoring a huge majority of objections on that, you insisted it's safe. Now here comes leaves, which means, excuse me, you had your time. I'm sorry, let me finish. We have since waited to see this be made safe, and now there's leaves gathering in this unsafe cycle lane, which make it even more unusable. Then there are leaves on the pavements, which mean pedestrians cannot walk without slipping. There are leaves in my gutter in my street that have flooded my basement twice in the last 10 days, and we've had to go out and remove the leaves from our guttering simply to let our drainage flow so our basement doesn't flood. You not only are putting in dangerous infrastructure, you're not even maintaining the basics of it by doing a simple mitigating issue of clearing the leaves everywhere for all people who use all walks of transport.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we'll take the question of the lady in front. As I know, it will be answered. It will be answered. Will be answered. Make note of that, please, Tim and Sabil, and then take note of this next question. Thank you.
Isabel Smith, Burlington Road. You say 25 millimetres. That's in a cycle path. The paving slabs in pavements throughout Chiswick are shifted by much more than that. Walk down Burlington Road. You do know that because we've been telling you. I would like to ask a question that relates to it, because tree roots, as you know, are a real pain when it comes to pavements. You have a rule in your long list of rules, which includes this 25 millimetres, which says that if a resident has a tree in their front garden, it must be 2.5 metres from the pavement. I think you used the word walkway. Why are the trees not being planted 2.5 metres? Now, I know the answer to that. How can you?
Madam.
But if you plant forest trees within a metre of people's front walls, you're making the pavements dangerous and an impossible situation for you.
Thank you.
We're all in this together.
Thank you. Madam, you make a very good point. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. But can we please, just to get more questions through, try and keep it brief and direct. So, Tim, could you answer the question on drainage, which is very, very pertinent, especially now? And then, Sabil, if you can respond to the pavement and slabs and tree. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I think we dealt with the drainage already. It was the C9 issue.
Sorry, you're not. Tim, you're not responsible for C9. What they're talking about is the drainage on the actual carriageway of C9. It has nothing to do with C9 itself, just the road being blocked, the drains being blocked. Okay. Is that the issue?
The leaf fall.
The leaf fall, yes.
Fine, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as I've said, we do have a plan that's on the website. We know that strategic roads are a priority just because of the volume of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, and that's why we put our resource on that in the beginning. Chiswick High Road, the cycle lane, has an attendance once or even twice a week now during the leafing season with a small sweeper, early in the morning when there's less cyclists on it for all safety reasons. We also have our additional dedicated teams that then do an additional clean sweep. Leaves are falling. I guess it's good in a way because it means that you've got trees next to it. We're getting around to them as quickly as we can. And I assure that Chiswick High Road has been done at least twice in various forms, once in a big clean sweep, and we'll be going there again because the leaves are still on the trees. We will get a cold snap and that will drop them all down and that will clear it. It's just a question of trying to get around the roads as quickly as we can with the resource that we have. And the resource is limited. We try and target the roads, so the program's based upon roads that have trees on them or near them, so near parks, to ensure that we are sending the resource to the right place.
Thank you, Tim. Just to address the tree planting question, I think the rules that you mentioned may be something to do with conservation areas, so it's not our rule. But we are, sorry? Our list. Okay. So what we are doing now is when we plant new trees, we're looking at this type of species and how the growth will be, not only now but in the future. We are placing root barriers underground when we plant new trees, so that will make the roots grow downwards rather than upwards, and obviously affect the footway as well. This planting season, which started this month and it will be until March, we're planting 480 new trees. And all of those trees are of the right type. They're not park trees, so they're not massive planes or oaks that will cause problems for people in the future. They're the right species. So we're confident that that footway damage that trees are causing won't be an issue going forward.
Thank you.
The ones that are causing issues already, like Tim said, they are under constant inspection, and when we need to do works, we will do the works.
I just wanted to just double check something. In terms of drainage, you're saying you do twice a week on on High Road. Can that be increased? Because at the moment, obviously, flooding has been permanent on High Road itself. So what can the lady there take away from this meeting other than just a holding message? What practical things can we expect from Hounslow Highways in response to a concern like that?
So when we're talking about drainage, I think we're specifically referencing leaf fall and how that affects drainage. So that's where the sweeping comes in. Drains themselves are generally on a routine of 18 months in terms of sending a specific gully tanker to that drain to clear it out. The issue, especially on Chiswick High Road, is where you get leaves over the gully grate. So that's where the sweepers come in. We've also doubled the routine walkers. So there's normally 2 barrow walkers dedicated to Chiswick High Road. We actually doubled that to 4 in November to ensure that there's an additional daily presence. But realistically, we can't attend Chiswick High Road every day with mechanical sweepers because there are other roads that just have to be done. So we look at that from a safety perspective. Once a week, early morning with a mechanical sweeper, and then a clean sweep with heavy sweepers every month or so.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Just very quickly, your graph earlier and your comments recognise that weeds are a problem. I got slightly obsessed over the summer period because as I left my house, there was a large selection of weeds and some of them were going towards a metre plus, and I was very sort of OCD about it and taking photos. I reported them all, nothing ever happened. But I was also conscious that travelling around the entire borough, it wasn't a Chiswick issue. When I go into the Hounslow House for meetings, all the streets around, weeds are a problem. I work in the London Borough of Southwark. It's not a problem there. I travel back to Hounslow through Ealing and sometimes through Wandsworth and all the boroughs in between. It's not a problem there. So you recognise there's a problem. You've got more people on it. You didn't respond to anything I raised as councillor or as resident about the ones in my street. There is on your website, or there was on your website, a list of roads to be treated. My bit of Strand on the Green wasn't on the list. I raised that also with the council. Nothing ever happened. So other than employing more people, which you've finally got around to. The weeds have gone now, by the way, because they've obviously died, because it's autumn, and that's one good thing about it. But we'll be here again next year. So you recognise it's a problem. The graph is going up. It's gone down again. It'll go up again. And you recognise that. You made that comment yourself. So perhaps, other than that, what we're going to do, why are we in this... It seems to me that we're in a particular situation where Richmond, Ealing, Southwark, Westminster, the list goes on, don't have this problem. What are they doing that we're not?
So, may I? So this is now the 3rd year where we are chemical free. So all of the boroughs you've mentioned, save Westminster, use chemicals. Now, in a way that's good because it kills the weed, but there is then the biodiversity impact of using chemicals. The only 2 boroughs, to my knowledge, in London, there's 3. City of London, I think Westminster use limited amounts, Hammersmith and Fulham, and Hounslow. And it's only really Hammersmith, Fulham and Hounslow that have taken that brave step. Hammersmith have trialled the same equipment we have and they come to the same conclusion. It doesn't matter whether it's foam stream, electric cattle prods, any people is the only way of resolving it at this point in time. There was legislation that was going to be in place that was essentially going to ban glyphosate in 2023, 24. Now, when we went into Brexit, left the European Union, that legislation then became defunct. It's extended to 2028. So it was a sigh of relief for a lot of local authorities around the country as they realised they no longer had to deal with that issue. And Hounslow been brave, and it's making the right decision in terms of we don't want to use chemicals. We are trialling everything we can. We have put an additional 30 people on the network, and that's Ringway have put an additional 30 people on the network to help deal with the immediate issue, and we'll learn lessons as we go through it. Because, like I say, we're concerned also about the long-term impact on the carriageway and footway. It's not just the weed. You let weeds grow, and what we've seen is not just the weed issue. The weeds have germinated more over the last 3 years, and so there is just more weeds on every road, which means it takes us longer to get round to it. And we just have to work together with our neighbouring councils, which are Hammersmith and Fulham, and with the council and with our partners in parks to try and address this issue. And at the moment, it is more people. But a solution will create itself because, you know, the market will create it as the use of glyphosate becomes more and more suspect.
Thank you, Tim. I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to take one more question. And wait. If you have a question on this particular case and is not answered, my colleague Afsal is in the corner there. Just hand him that question and that will come to me and we'll respond to you directly. Madam, please.
Thank you. You mentioned working with other councils and that also the issue of fly tipping has gone up. I'm just wondering whether situations like removing resources, like closing the Stirling Road recycling centre, whether you think that has had an impact because the alternatives now are quite some considerable distance away.
So not trying to pass the buck on this one, but not responsible for the waste centres themselves. Do I think it's had an impact? In a marginal way. We do a lot of work on fly tipping to understand where it's happening. We know that there are key wards in the borough where it's worse, and there is direct linkages between fly tipping, which is essentially largely domestic waste. It's not commercial fly tipping, although it does happen. It is domestic waste, black bags, outside of shops. And there's been some really good stuff done in the last year or two. So the grit bins we put in shopping areas with the council, that's good for flats above shops, working with local community groups to get the good messages out, working with businesses. It is a behavioural change issue. I don't think the closure of a particular centre would be a problem because those people will still go to another centre. They will find a way of getting that waste into the right waste stream. I do think it's about how much waste we create. And it did get worse during COVID as more people were at home. But I do think we are starting to turn the curve in terms of addressing it. We've seen fly tipping reduce in key wards as the graph I showed earlier happened. So I think we are getting there. It's just going to take a few years, that's all.
Okay. Very briefly, Councillor Giles.
Tim and Sabine, this is a question for both of you. Prior to the pandemic, we used to have quarterly wardabouts with Hounslow Highways and members of your teams to highlight areas that we'd identified that obviously may not come up on these pieces. Can I ask when the schedule for that is going to be released so that we can resume those?
So I'll answer that because we've got members of our community development team who are carrying out ward walks, and my team are joining those as well as Hounslow Highways, so they've superseded.
So will we be invited to those as well? So it's all been in the same one now?
In the same wards that Elliot's team and Tom Allen's team are arranging.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. That wasn't clear from any of the other correspondence that we'd received. Thank you.
Okay, we have to move on because just quickly on to another, stay there for 1 second just in case. Agenda item 2, we have to move on. I'm really sorry, yeah. We have to move on to agenda item 2, which is the petition. I'll allow Jefferson to come forward and introduce agenda item 2. 3, I beg your pardon, sorry, 3. First time.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jefferson Nwokoma, Assistant Director for Traffic, Transport and Parking. The petition in question relates to, I think, some residents on Barrowgate Road asking for all W4 residents to drive across the 8-4 at Sutton Court Road traffic lights. I believe is the petition. Sorry, let me make sure I am looking at the right petition.
Are we not talking about the petition that for the A4 and Sutton Court Road for access across?
Yes.
Yes, that's the petition.
I understood petitions came to the councillors, not to the officers.
Okay, let me explain so that we understand. There's a petition that was dormant on the council website, which by way of the way the council works, we can't just let it sit there indefinitely, so we need to address it. Yes, there was only 19 signatures on it, but it does... Thank you. Thank you. A petition only needs 2 signatures. Now, it needs to be addressed, and Jefferson has kindly offered to address those issues on there. I do have a burning question that attached to that kind of petition, which I'm hoping you would also address. So it's quite an important petition, I feel, but we just need to close it off. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to read it out. I think it says in very simple terms, we, the undersigned petition, the council to continue to allow all W4 residents to drive across the A4 at Sutton Court Road traffic lights. If those who live north of the A4, especially to the west, are prevented from crossing A4 at Sutton Court Road traffic lights, they will have to drive along the A4 or up Barrowgate Road to Hogarth Roundabout, then back along A316 in order to access Dukes Meadows and Thames Riverside. Chiswick residents do not want to be divided into restricted enclaves without access to facilities and amenities in other parts of the W4 area. This ran between the 12th of November 2021 through to 7th of March 2022 and was signed by 19 people. The issues around Barrowgate Road are noted. We are very aware of it. The configuration of the junction of Sutton Court Road and the A4 means that those seeking to access Sutton Court Road essentially have to go through Barrowgate Road up across the A4 through to Sutton Court Road. Now, the A4, as most residents know, is not a council road. That road is on TfL's network. So any changes to the scheme or any reconfiguration of the A4 at that junction can only be done by TfL. We can, of course, challenge them. We can, of course, make a request. But ultimately, it is their road. They decide how it is configured. So whilst I can see where the petitioners are coming from, and whilst I can understand, due to the restrictions that are in South Chiswick, particularly on Burlington Road, Burlington Lane, means that there's probably an increase in traffic on the A4, and people seeking to cross the A4 into South Sutton Court Road. I just don't think, one, this is a solution that's within the gift of the council, firstly, and secondly, the measures we have at Burlington Lane are trials. So they will come to an end at some point, and the council will then have to make a decision whether that trial becomes permanent or whether it is revoked.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll take I know I can see your face that you are wanting to ask a question here. Could you put your hand up again, please, sir? Yeah. And then I'll take a question from Councillor Giles on this particular issue. Go ahead, sir.
Just briefly, this petition means that there is some kind of potential move to restrict traffic from crossing the A4 into South Chiswick. Is that what we need to understand? Because nobody understands that. I've asked many of my friends in the area who've lived here for donkey's years. No one knows about this. And we're being put into ghettos. You're chopping our area up so that we can't move around. You say nothing to us. We just find out by some petition that happens to slip in under the back door. I mean, what's going on? We don't know.
So can I just speak to this topic? Because I think it's very clear that there has been a lack of understanding of... So looking at the date of this petition, it was this time last year. And I think the fact that we're now dealing with this a year later has shown some of the issues that may not have been clearly communicated back then. Because in my mind, looking at this petition is asking for something that's already in place. Because actually, if you look at what Hounslow have done, I'm not saying that I agree with everything, but if you look at what they've done, the A4 via Sutton Court Road is the only access route into Grove Park without a restriction, which means that this petition at the time may have been valid because of lack of understanding of what was being implemented at the time. But now it is very useful to talk to, but it's no longer relevant. So can I suggest and recommend that we move on to the next topic?
Sorry. No, wait. I'm the chair, I decide. And we're going to carry on having a chat about this. Now, one thing to be aware of is that the reason why we're bringing this up is procedurally to close it off, okay? We can't let it sit there dormant for indefinitely. Does anybody else wish to make a wider point on that issue? Go ahead. There's a lady in front there in a brown hat. No. No, so Barrowgate Road is, at the moment, is chocker with traffic for people turning to Saturn Court Road. Okay, this is not a dialogue, I'm afraid. Let's let the lady speak. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, since the restrictions back in 2020, I think it started, is that right? I live on Barrowgate Road. I need to go to Grove Park because that's where my surgery is. And when I drive down, and also I go to the gym by Chiswick Pool, if I drive down that way, I get a parking ticket. So I don't understand why, you know, how is it just because I live at this end, I'm restricted, and those who live in the north or the south are not?
Yeah. So I'll let Jefferson respond and close off, and we move from that particular. We've got more transport-related issues to come. Jefferson, thank you.
Do I need to address that, the lady's point? If you live to the north of the A4 and you need to go to Grove Park, there are no restrictions through Sutton Court Road. So you can drive across the A4 into Sutton Court Road and go to your surgery. The restrictions only exist at Staveley Road, at the junction with A316, and at Hartington Road at the junction with the A316. In fact, on Hartington Road, if you're traveling south, i.e. towards the A316, there is no restriction. The restriction only applies if you're traveling from the A316 coming up towards, into Hartington Road. I think it's a scheme.
It is confusing. Now, okay, it is very confusing. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, yeah, I know, and I hear you. I hear you. Now, we have got Afsal on my left, on your right-hand side as you face me. Please, if you have a question on that particular area for further clarification, please make a note to him. I'll respond to you via Jefferson. Oh, I'll ask Bridget to close off with the last question, please. Thanks, Bridget.
Or parking, because access to Grove Park is one set of arguments, but parking is surely another. I mean, why do you get a parking ticket? Because you don't live in that area. I mean, we're confusing two things here. We're talking about parking and we're talking about access.
It's access.
Right, access. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Please make yourself aware to Afsal should you require need to raise this point further. We'll move to the next item on the agenda. Item 4. Traffic and transport. It looks like it's you again. Thank you so much. Oh, Tim and Sabil, before you go, how much time do we have? Just before you leave, we've got one last question.
Sorry, it's Councillor Ranjit Gill for Chiswick, Canterbury. The question I was going to raise was regarding flooding. I think the problem with the flooding on the streets in Chiswick and the rest of Hounslow, I think the problem of the flooding in Chiswick and in the rest of Hounslow in Feltham is the lack of planning. Because you know the leaves would be coming down in the autumn, but none of the the holes that are in the street where the water would go through, those were not cleared, and as such, all the streets, everywhere you get flooding. So I think you need to plan that in advance when you know the leaves are coming down and the rains are going to start in November, and we won't have all this flooding all over the place. Simple.
As with anything, yes, planning is a key part of it. So we have a gully cleansing program, which means that the gully should be attended, normally in conjunction with cleansing, so we need the park and suspension to jet the gully. But the reality is what we're seeing more recently is volume of water. The infrastructure was not built for the volume of water that we're getting, and I think Tim Mack, said that 1 year's rainfall in 1 month, I think, in Chiswick. And so part of it is that as well, and we need to understand if that's the way things are going to be from now on, that's where we need the future investment with Thames Water and Suds. We need the cleansing regime to be right, isn't always right. And part of that just means ensuring that the leaves are kept off the gully grates as well. So I take the point, but part of it is also just about capacity, because once the rain gets into the gully, it's got nowhere to go until the rest drains through.
Thank you, Tim, and thanks for coming. Please, any further questions on Hounslow Highways, please get them through to my colleague Afsar, who can pass the message through to us. Okay, we're going to move back to traffic and transport, and we've got Jefferson here and the lead member for transport, Councillor Catherine Dunn, who has kindly offered to be here to attend. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that I appreciate that some of the transport and traffic measures in Chiswick have not been universally welcomed, but I'm hopeful that at least, even if you don't agree with the implementation or the scheme itself, that at least you would appreciate what the schemes are trying to achieve and what rests and what is at the very heart of these schemes. So,
all right. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Sue, I'm sorry. Can we allow the gentleman to speak? And then your objections will come through the chair. Please. Let's not have a shouting match. People are watching. Thank you.
Okay, I will. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this scheme, so I will try and keep this as brief as possible. So there are a number of measures that we're going to talk about. So Cycleway 9 being one of them, the temporary Cycleway 9, South Chiswick, the South Chiswick LTN, and East Chiswick CPZ, and TFL's work on the A4. I'm not here representing TFL, but I think their scheme has an impact on our network, so I think it's probably worth touching on. Cycleway 9, we started the first tranche of Cycleway 9 last year. It was supposed to be obviously still a trial, and at the end of the trial period, once construction is complete, we'll gather the data, collect data, and review it, and take a view as to whether it is made permanent or not. The first part of it, which is we call 3A, began last year, around November last year, and was completed in the summer. We took a break for a couple of months, and the second part, which is the blue section you can see on the drawing, that began in October, and we are on track to complete it in January next year. And these are some of the changes that we are looking to implement. Some of them obviously have already been implemented as part of the first tranche of C9. Next slide, please. Similar? No. Yeah. Yep. And I think what is worth noting in 3B, obviously there are some changes that we are making, but what is worth noting is from the 2nd of December, there will be a Christmas embargo, which will suspend works until January next year. That obviously has added 4 weeks to the program, but we think it's important to maintain the embargo throughout the Christmas period to minimize disruption. But we are still very much on track. At the moment, we are 2 weeks ahead of schedule, and we're very much on track to complete works in January. Next slide, please. Right, so because it's a trial, alongside construction, there is a consultation taking place. It's a 6-month It says 6 months. Every time you implement a new trial, yes, there is a consultation period. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a trial. Okay.
Just 1 second, please. No, you got, gentlemen, ladies, we were actually quite good there for about 5 minutes. Please, just, I understand. No, I hear you. I hear you, and we all hear you. We are your councillors, and we hear you. And hang on a second, can I finish? We have the decision maker in the room on some of those issues tonight. So they hear you as well. So I hear you and I'm listening to you. Can you listen to him? Thank you.
So the consultation began in October, and it will run for 6 months, and therefore it will end on the 3rd of April next year. So I would encourage both supporters and opponents of the scheme to make their views heard, or make sure that you respond to it. That's the best way to give the council a feel of your thoughts and views on the scheme. The South Chiswick Street Space Program, there are probably two main areas that are of concern. This is obviously the public realm scheme, which is the piazza, which is due to be, it's currently under review. It was designed before the pandemic. We are currently reviewing that design to make sure that it's still fit for purpose and hopefully make some improvements to it. We're hoping, subject to funding being available, to implement it from the next financial year, so 23-24. I sense there won't be any clap for this one. The Burlington Lane and Stavely Road, Stavely Road Low Traffic Neighborhoods trial began last year. Now, the intention of this scheme is to reduce the volume of traffic traveling through what are essentially residential roads. Now, the Stavely Road scheme has a school in it, so it was a school street. However, we did find out that there was actually a lot of traffic going through outside the operational hours. As a result, we decided to run a trial which would harmonize it with the other two trials we have in the area. So Strand on the Green, which was a previous trial, which was made permanent, and then Hartington Road, which was previously 24-hour restriction, which has also been changed from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Not only do we have harmony in the restriction times and operational hours, but also it removed a loophole that existed within the scheme. That trial began in January last year. We are now coming to the end of the trial period, and we expect to publish the results, our findings, and hopefully a decision in January. The Burlington Lane trial was introduced because we found out that during the trial there was an increase in traffic on Burlington Lane. That was one of the results we found. In response to that, we put in a restriction at its junction with the A316 to stop traffic coming through from the A316, using it as a call through. Now, that again is a trial. We'll review it at the end of this year. The data and the results that we've been collating is pretty much complete, and we should be in a position to take a decision on that scheme in January as well. So these are two trials, and I think I want people to genuinely believe that they are trials. If the results do not support their continuation, then the council will take a view. But there are trials, they are not permanent measures.
Thank you. Jefferson, thank you very much. You still going to talk on CPZs? Or?
Yes.
But can you be very brief, because these people have come here to be heard, but on a second point, they also want a proper response to their queries, and with utmost respect to them as well. So yes, they're angry, but they need a response.
Yeah, so the East Chiswick CPZ was became necessary due to the impact of the cinema and some of the developments in the area, which led to a lot of parking pressure on those roads. So we had to extend the operational hours to incorporate a number of roads into that CPZ. I believe that is now having the desired effect, and I think Councillor Todd is particularly pleased with the outcome. I think who campaigned for a very long time for us to put those measures in place. So I think that's a good news story. Again, that's the council listening and putting in place measures to address the problem. TfL's works on the A4 is a very important work. I'm really sorry, and I have great sympathy with residents due to the effect it's had on in the area. It's very disruptive. It has, from a council point of view, from a highways point of view, it has displaced considerable traffic onto the council's network. But it's a very important piece of work. Anybody who questions the need and necessity for engineering maintenance work, major maintenance work, you only have to think about what happened in Italy a couple of years ago, where poor maintenance resulted in loss of life and a significant cost to replace that bridge in Genoa. So TfL are on track to complete that work. I can reassure residents that that work is on track to be finished in December before Christmas.
Thank you very much. Okay, now, no, not yet. Can I take this lady here, please? Yes.
I would like to ask about the South Chiswick scheme. You say that it's all temporary, and yet you've made a permanent barrier on Staveley Road. So that is actually, that is causing all the traffic to be displaced from Staveley Road onto Burlington Lane. So all the residents on Burlington Lane are now up in arms because there's so much traffic down there. So then you have to put in all the restrictions you're putting in. Before all of this, we kind of muddled along. I mean, it isn't great, but we do live in London. Yeah. So why in a trial scheme is there a barrier that you have made permanent and unbelievably have said Staveley Road is not a straight road, it is now a curved road? It's not a curved road. You put a bloody curvy, bendy barrier across it. It's a straight road that you've put a barrier across, and if that wasn't there, we wouldn't have so much trouble. Could you explain why that bit is permanent when you say the whole scheme is temporary?
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think that's a very important question because there seems to be a lot of conflation going on. The Staveley Road barrier, as it's referred to, is actually a curved section, was made permanent last year. So it was previously a trial. It was made permanent last year. And if you ask me why, if you let me speak, then I will address the why question. I think it's absolutely inexcusable to have 4,000 vehicles going through what is a residential road. There is no excuse for it. That should be unacceptable.
Okay. Thank you. Just 1 second.
Is lovely and quiet, fantastic for everyone who lives on Staveley Road, but for everybody else who's now putting up with the displaced traffic, it's not okay. And I still don't understand why one little bit, you haven't explained why one bit is permanent and the rest is a temporary thing still. You haven't explained that.
Before that, sorry, 1 second. Can Councillor Gill ask a question on following up to that first?
Jefferson, you promised to listen to everyone here. So please do listen. And that's what everyone here has come to today, so that they get the correct answers. But it seems that the council is not listening. No matter how many replies you get, you're not satisfied the general public, and that's the problem. So I don't know, you know, you're making all these schemes which might look good on the paper, but in reality, it doesn't work. It's not practical. So please listen to everyone here today. Take away what they've got to say, and then come back with the right answers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll let Jefferson answer that, and then I'll take a question from the lady with the after the questions answered, and then can I ask for Rob King to come forward as well, please? There's a space chair for you here, Rob King. Okay, go ahead.
That's a very important question that I would like to clarify. So, the lower part of Staveley Road that abuts the A316 was not part of the initial trial. So that was simply a school street with restrictions during drop-off times and pick-up times. What we saw during the trial, the only road actually, and this is often forgotten fact, the only road where there was an increase in traffic volumes was Burlington Lane. Every other road within the South Chiswick area saw significant reduction in traffic volumes. So it's just not the case that. So if I may just, if I may just address the lady's question. Once we saw that there's been an increase in Burlington Lane traffic, we realized that a lot of the traffic was coming through from the A316 through Burlington Lane. Hence the need for that additional measure that we put in place as a trial. Now, if at the end of the trial, we take every data we've collected into account, and if it hasn't made the difference we want it to make, taking into account other factors as well, then we will take a view as whether to continue that, we make it permanent or not. But it is only a trial that became necessary to address increase of volume of traffic on Burlington Lane. Staveley Road is a quiet residential road. There are no, and I'll try and explain this, Chair, if you could indulge me for a moment. Every road is not the same. So every road has its own individual characteristics and features. So if I may make progress, I think I'll maybe try and address some of the questions people may have. So Burlington Lane, for example, has a number of what we in the transport world call trip generators. So it has a station. It has GP surgeries, it has shopping parades, it has all the...
Okay, thank you. No, please.
I am just trying to explain the nuanced differences between a road like Burlington Lane and the rest of the roads on Staveley Road, for example.
Okay, sorry, Jefferson, I'll stop you there because they don't need to know what the difference is. They need to an answer to the question. Councillor Dunn.
Well, I was going to answer the question about why some have been made permanent, but I think Jefferson's covered that. I mean, there was a series... Okay,
yeah, could you expand on it, please?
Sure. There were a number of different experimental traffic orders, which is the scheme, the order that we can bring in to put these trials in place. And so some things came in at different times, and some had changes made to them. So the trial for Staveley came to an end, and then that decision was taken based on the data available to make it permanent. And then there's I believe it's two continuing traffic orders, experimental traffic orders, which are coming to an end, and so those decisions will be taken in January.
Thank you. There's a lady. No, thank you.
I think the question is, do you listen to the residents?
Order. Oh, whoa. Thank you so much. Excuse me. Let's please go through a chair. I understand. But
I
please.
haven't been to one of these before, so I'm pleased to be able to speak. Chiswick High Road is now gridlocked without a bus lane. I am 60 plus. I have my Oyster Plus card, which I should be using every day, but actually I use my car because there's no point me sitting in a bus. The bus does not move. It doesn't go anywhere. So me and my neighbours, we all go by car because that way at least you can phone a friend, you can do your Spanish class. I was such a shame. I always used to take the bus. I used it every day. I don't use it at all now. It's just not worth it. It goes nowhere. You've just caused chaos. What are you going to do about it? The A4 has the most fantastic two massive pavements. Why one of those can't be part of a cycle? Because a cycle's important. But we need to have everyone in harmony. We need buses, we need cars, and we need cycles. And everyone needs to feel safe. And that would do the job.
Madam, what's your name, please?
Vivian Parker.
Vivian, we'll come back to your question a bit later on.
Thank you.
I'm just going to move quickly to Councillor Giles. Vivian. Councillor Giles, and then I'm going to ask for Rob King to make a brief statement.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine and Jefferson, for your comments. I think what's very interesting, and I'm conscious that neither of you have been involved in this as long as I have, but I think what we've seen is that actually back in 2020, there were 10 items on that list of priorities that we wanted to be dealt with, namely the crossing of the A4 and Sutton Court Road, the A316 and Hartington Road and Grove Park Bridge. I think what we saw, and through my discussions with Sam Hearn and some of your predecessors, we were basically, or it was made quite obvious that due to the pandemic, it was going to be what could be implemented quickly and cheaply. And I put the emphasis on cheaply, which is why the barrier at Stavey Road is probably still there, and why, as a timeline, it was done and made permanent before the other experimental measures. And what we were told is that everything would be experimental and that we would be moving things in time. We have seen the council experimenting, but unfortunately, there has been a situation where there's been a bit of a rod, shall we say. So Jefferson, I just had a question, and I'm just conscious of kind of this isn't you, and a lot of it's timelines and bureaucracy and what was available at the time. But at the same time, when the A4 was closed due to the roadworks, I asked for traffic monitors to be put in because we didn't actually have any traffic data for what was happening to the area once the Staveley Road barrier was in, but the other routes were open. So I was going to ask if that was done and when we can see the data from that result, because I think that would be really insightful. And what we've seen is that you have put an emphasis on the quantitative, and you've said yourself that you will want to put data, or you want to put the emphasis on the traffic data and air quality monitoring, which we didn't have any until 2021, I believe. So my question is, when can we see that data, and when can we, and was it taken actually? Because I think that would be really insightful, because the data that you have post the barrier was actually still when the pandemic was occurring and most people were still on lockdown.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Be very brief on this, because we'll come back to it after after Rob has said something on.
So I think Councillor Giles is absolutely correct to point out that some of these schemes had to be introduced at pace. I would contest the suggestion that they were done cheaply. It wasn't really about cost necessarily, it was about time. The Secretary of State's instruction was for these schemes to be introduced at pace, and the council had to respond accordingly. To your specific question, yes, we did collect pre-data before the measures were relaxed. So we do have that data, and we'll compare it once they're back in place.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, can I introduce, I'll let you to introduce yourself actually. We have a guest speaker, first of many hopefully to come around, Rob King.
Hello, I have no microphone so I won't stand up, but first I just want to explain why I'm here. I chair the Grove Park Group, which is the residents association, or one of the residents associations south of the A4. I've, like Gabriella, spent over 2 years involved in seeing this scheme as it's implemented by the council, working through the detail, trying to explain it to residents, and also trying to put forward suggestions for improvements to the scheme. I want to talk about several practical points about the current scheme. And I wanted to also make a statement around South Chiswick residents. As residents, it isn't for us to say who is in or out of the scheme. That is really for the council. So I'm not going to be touching on whether people north of the A4 or south of the A4 should be in or out of it. We've been working with the other resident groups, so SOGA, the local street groups, those who live east of the A316, and as we now understand, use Grove Park in a very heavy way. And we've been trying to find ways to improve it. We've made several suggestions to the scheme, some of which have been acknowledged by the council, some of which have been positively implemented, not all. We proposed 2 alternative schemes which we thought were going to be better. They were simpler, they had resident support, but they were dismissed out of hand. And we've got several practical issues that remain. We've conducted 2 surveys, the last one being in February of this year. We had over 500 residents responding. 70% of residents were in favour of having road controls in the South Chiswick area. Almost 90% of residents didn't support the current measures that were in place at that time, and they have barely changed since. The concessions that we've achieved so far is to alleviate some of the impact of the newly increased through traffic on Burlington Lane and Sutton Court Road, which is directly as a result of the scheme. There's a merged whitelist, which has allowed residents to pass through the cameras, and it's brought a degree of consistency and practicality to the scheme. So we're positive and grateful for that. However, the scheme is not working. This year, so far, over £10 million worth of fines have been issued by Hounslow Council from just 2 streets in South Chiswick. And we think that that data point alone, proves the need for the scheme to be modified in several areas, and it's on those that I'd like to talk. The first one is visitor access. As offered in other boroughs,
Sorry, when are you going to pay the people of Chiswick back £10 million you've made on 2 roads in Chiswick in 6 months? £10 million you've taken from hard-earning people who cannot afford to lose this kind of money. It's a disgrace.
I'd like to state that whilst we would agree with some of the sentiment there, that's nothing to do with GPG, but thank you. So visitor access, other boroughs offer this through a simple app-based scheme. Why do we not have it? It would allow for scheduled visits from friends or family, carers that we need at home, or tradespeople, some of whom don't want to come to the area anymore. It's logical, and we've been told it won't happen, but why? So that's the first point. Second point, speed review. For 2 years, we've been asking the police to monitor and take some action in the area. It's just not been forthcoming. I was speaking with the Chief Inspector earlier on today and reminding him of that fact. The average speed data that we've had from the council from a couple of years ago showed traffic was travelling above the speed limit, quite considerably in some cases. We've requested data recently that shows even the buses are speeding. And that's an indication of speed within our local roads. It's one of the first things that local residents talk to us about, speed. We were told that the first speed review by the council showed no problem. We challenged it with our data points, and that data was being rerun. It's not been mentioned in tonight's presentation. We don't know why, and we want action. Third point, signage review and scheme simplification. The council says the signage is compliant, but with exceptionally high fine levels, £10 million so far this year. So far this year, yeah. It's clearly not working. And also, we understand that over 40% of appeals are upheld there. So again, proving that the signage is not working. Taxi drivers are confused, visitors also.
You need to get close
Scheme
off,
needs more
please.
consistency. Fourth and last point, traffic divergence. It's been touched on by some of the other speakers as well. The traffic flows have been changed in our areas as a result of the scheme. I'd like to just pick up on the last point around consultation. You've consulted and you've closed a consultation in an area that's now been impacted by a new scheme that you've implemented. That is why we think it should be reconsulted, and you should be looking at that as a combination, because it's had an effect. With the introduction of the barrier on the Staveley Road, the council showing intransigence on removing that barrier, But instead, as a practical measure, if that barrier is not going to be removed, we'd suggest that they look again at the traffic flows on Burlington Lane, potentially extending the scheme operating hours from 8 a.m. to 7 a.m., which is where the council's own data shows that there is a build-up of rush hour traffic. Why not add a pedestrian crossing to help Chiswick school pupils? Why not consider traffic calming potentially on that road? And then consult on it, and then listen to our views.
Thank you.
So last, to wrap up, in summary, the scheme's been in for 2 years. It's been presented tonight as a fait accompli, but you've introduced it. It's your job to fix it, and you've so far dismissed the suggestions that we've made tonight. You can't dismiss the issues that are being experienced by hundreds of resident households in South Chiswick. So the question is, and this is what we'd like minuted, when are you going to acknowledge these issues? When will you respond to residents? In your view, does the scheme work? Is it now permanent? And are you actually open to modifying the scheme to help South Chiswick residents live their lives?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna put that question to the lead member on this. Is there a lady called Virginia here is she here? I would then ask Virginia to also make a comment because she's come a long way and she needs to get back home before 9:30, I think. Go on, Virginia.
Hi, I'm called Virginia Shapiro, and I live in Chiswick, north of the Underground. My husband is completely bedridden. He needs carers 4 times a day, 2 carers, to move him around and look after him and cope with him. And they work mainly just south of the Underground on Fisher's Lane. They used to get to us in a car, and they need cars. They're women of a certain age. They've never ridden a bike, and it takes them a long time to walk. They're not that fit. They used to come in 5 minutes. They now take up to 20 minutes to get to us. These are women who work for not a lot of money. We pay them decently, but not a lot of money, on a very tight schedule, very long hours, and it has completely buggered up their lives, to make a point. Now, there are many things you could do about this, but my main point is you need exemption for essential workers from all these schemes. Mine are affected by Fisher's Lane. They should be allowed to drive through Fisher's Lane. Others are affected by, I'm sure, the Grove Park restrictions, and they need to be allowed to drive through Grove Park. There's a perfectly good scheme for parking for carers in Ealing, where you apply for a permit for them, you pay a sensible amount of money, I think it's £40, and a GP has to affirm that the carer is needed. So that is a way of avoiding fraud. Why on earth, and I have raised this in several consultations, can this not be done for all essential workers? I don't know if it's done for district nurses who also visit us. I don't know if it's done for others, but it needs to be done for essential workers who work privately.
You raise a very important point, and we can come back to that question. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I just add a quick rider? I bike round Chiswick. The bike lane is totally useless to me. The shop...
Okay.
I have to bike round Chiswick because I don't walk very well.
Fair enough.
And the pollution on the high street is disgusting.
Yes,
and the last thing I would do is bike along the high road.
Okay.
And I never, ever, when I do use, and that side of the road, and use the bike lane, I see 1, maybe 2 cyclists.
You've made your point. Thank you so much, Virginia. Thank you. And get home safely as well. I'm going to ask Catherine and Jefferson to firstly respond to Rob's statement. Rob, if you can put that statement also in writing to us so that we may have a copy. Your councillors, Giles, Croft and Thompson may want to be copied in as well. Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. So, Rob, thank you very much for coming here and talking us through that this evening. Always very happy to listen to residents. And I think So as you mentioned in your presentation, we have already made several changes based on feedback from residents to the various schemes, and I'd like to thank you for acknowledging that. The ones that Rob described. So there have been, so the point is we put in these trial schemes, and the schemes give you various points at which you can review things, make changes, or carry on. And we have, so we have made changes at those points in response to local residents. So you have outlined some further points of concern, which I appreciate. And some of those, I think we have taken on board and are looking at as well. So I'll let Jefferson talk in a minute about the speed review and the signage review. Yes, I know there's, so I know there's been a request for visitor access. So no home within the area cannot receive visitors. That every part of the area is accessible to everyone. Okay.
Carry on, Councillor Dunn.
Yes, so there is that. So the point is to restrict the amount of traffic going through certain routes, and the scheme does that. Now we're going to look in detail at that before we make any decision about whether it's going to be permanent or not. But the worry is if you increase the number of people who have exemptions from the scheme, which we have already done in response to residents, then you start to dilute the usefulness of the scheme. And so, okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, lady, I'll give you a mic later, just please. Can I stop you there? Jefferson, and then there's a lady with a top hat, with a scarf. Can we please get a mic to her? Jefferson, could you also respond to this? And before you respond, can you at least promise that that Rob's recommendations will be looked at carefully and responded to as well, in turn?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I must thank Rob for actually acknowledging that the Council has listened and responded to some of those concerns. So that is often brushed aside and almost disregarded. So that is welcome. So when it comes to the scheme he suggested, and I have met Rob and his group, and Councillor Dawn as well, and my executive director. We've all met Rob and his group a number of times. And I have given very clear explanations as to why those schemes, or the proposal he made, is not practical for us. So if I could finish. The proposal he made is not for a low traffic neighborhood. Okay. No, I think it's useful actually to give people the background.
We don't need background now.
Okay.
We need answers.
But
thank you.
The background is the answer, Chair.
No.
Fine. Okay.
Sorry, I'll stop there. I'll stop there, Jefferson. I think everyone understands the context in which this question is being asked. I don't need another 5 minutes explaining that.
Chair,
can I ask the lady
Chair,
to ask a question, please?
We're coming up to 9 o'clock, and we need to extend standing orders, yeah? Is that agreed? Yeah?
Okay, please ask a question. We'll come back to you. Ask a question, please.
No. Oh, yeah. Right. In response to, you sent out questionnaires to all the different regions asking our opinions on these changes. In the responses that came back, between 67 and 82% people said, we don't want them, and we want them taken away immediately. But nothing happened. When you allowed traffic, because of the works, to come through Hartington Road, I regularly walk to Roco. I can dance in the street there. I can dance in the road. There's no traffic there. It's never been a problem. Maybe for about 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening. The other night, trying to drive back from Osterley, the A4 was shut. There were roadworks on the 316, so I didn't want to risk that. And basically, I had to go and stand on the green, where nobody knows what the rules are. Local residents don't know. So I went and I sat in the pub for half an hour in case there was this time limit, to be able to get home rather than be stuck in traffic on the road. It's ridiculous living in those areas that we cannot access. I can't invite friends round during the day because I'd be asking them for another 20 minutes, especially with roadworks, probably an hour to get to me. So for elderly people, and I'm getting there, you know, it's lonely because they can't have their carers, they can't have friends round, and also tradesmen have to pay extra.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will come to the ladies' questions. I'll address Rob King's specific questions, if I may. So in terms of the data dispute review, that's been done, and that will be sent to ward councillors in due course, hopefully very soon. So that's complete. The signage review is also complete. We are working with TfL to implement the changes we've identified. A report will also be sent to ward councillors very soon as well as to what we found and what we're proposing to do. Unfortunately, we're still in discussions with TfL to actually gain approval for what we're proposing to additional signage we're looking to put in place. But I must stress, and I've stressed this previously, the signs are compliant with every engineering standard. What we are looking to do is over and above minimum standards, required standards. So there's nothing wrong with the signage. We are just going over and above what is required.
I'm going to take a question from Councillor Croft, and then the gentleman in black at the back, and then the gentleman in front with the blue shirt. Two questions at the same time. So first to Councillor Croft, if you can respond to that, and then the gentleman standing, and the one right ahead of you also.
So mine's not a question, mine's just a comment, and a very, very quick one, because I know there's lots of residents that want to be heard. So I'm a very new councillor, only elected in May, and from my experience so far, and I realise that I am sitting as a Labour councillor in a panel of other Conservative councillors, but from my honest experience so far, the views that I've had put forward from residents have gone to both Jefferson and Catherine, and discussions have been had about how we can make changes sensibly to affect those. So the amalgamation of the two schemes is a first step, and I am confident, and I cannot speak for the lead member or the officer, but I'm confident that those are steps that are moving forward, and I think the best way to do that is to talk to your local ward councillors, who can then go and talk sensibly to officers about how we can improve the lives of residents who feel that they're having a negative impact made. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Sorry, Councillor Croft, we have been having those conversations for the last 4 years, and nothing seems to be... Thank you.
This is a different administration.
It might be a different... I take your point, it might be a different administration, but same old story, unfortunately. I'll take the two questions at the back there, and then we'll come back. We'll go to Ruler afterwards. Get two questions there, please.
Right, this is a different low traffic neighbourhood in the Glebe. I live in the Glebe estate. Unfortunately, I'm a builder, so I can't walk around. I have to drive a van. You cannot get onto Duke Road at times. I cannot get home. I am working from one side of the high road to the other, and sometimes it's taking me 45 minutes to drive from one side to the other side of the high road. Unfortunately, I don't have any choice. at least 3 times, including last Saturday morning, I actually had to leave my van at the bottom of the road and walk home because I could not physically get up Duke Road. It has been queued up past Reckitt towards Fraser Road. I'm sat currently wasting about an hour plus a day, sat polluting on Chiswick High Road because I cannot get from one side to the other side. So I'm wasting full days every week just because we cannot move through. What are you aiming to do about it?
Thank you very much. And we'll take the question from the gentleman ahead of you, and then we'll come back to the lead member and the officer.
You didn't mention in your presentation Fisher's Lane. Now, of course, you'll say that Fisher's Lane is a matter for Ealing, but Hounslow has to give consent for it. Hounslow enforces it, and it's Hounslow residents who are particularly impacted by Fisher's Lane. You have Fisher's Lane, you have South Parade is completely gridlocked as a result of closing Fisher's Lane. You brought that in, you allowed it to be brought in alongside the TfL C9. You brought it in fact, alongside the closure of Turnham Green, which thank goodness you've abandoned. And you brought it in alongside all the changes in the south of Chiswick. You know, where you have a duty to cooperate with Ealing, you've completely abandoned that duty, and you've abandoned Chiswick residents.
Okay. Right, Catherine. After this, we'll go to Ruler. After this, we'll go to Ruler at the back there.
Okay, just trying to take this in turn. I'll address the gentleman about the disruption on Chiswick High Road. I'm afraid, and I'm really sorry about the disruption that the works on Chiswick High Road is causing residents. We completely accept that. We acknowledge that. Unfortunately, it is not possible to deliver a major scheme on a high road without some disruption. It's not possible to deliver a scheme on. It's not possible to deliver a scheme on any road without some disruption. The good news is the scheme will be done. The Chiswick High Road element of the scheme will be completed by the end of January and will be out of the way.
Sorry, there was 2 questions there. One was Devonshire and that Glebe estate area, which is what the officer is answering to. And then the other is Fisher's Lane, which I'm sure you get to. Thank you.
Yes, Fisher's Lane, firstly, is a road, a part of it is in Ealing. So there's a joint, there was a joint decision. Okay. Okay. Fisher's Lane, both councils agreed to that decision. So yes, it's been made permanent. It is it's there to promote active travel, and we have as far as I'm aware, unless the lead member tells me otherwise, there are no plans to revisit that decision.
Right. Thank you. Ruler.
Thank you very much. I've lived here for 40 years. I've never seen such division. I've never seen such chaos on the roads. I would have more respect for the council if they said experimental means permanent, if temporary means permanent. Democracy is out of the window. You ignore consultations, and it's just become ridiculous. And the other thing I would say to the people of Chiswick is, we've gone along with this nonsense. We've allowed ourselves to talk about north, south, east, west Chiswick. There is only Chiswick, and we should not be doing this.
Thank you. There's a gentleman in the middle. There's a gentleman in the middle with a white shirt. Yeah, there you go. That white jumper.
This is not a question. This is a statement from somebody who's lived in Chiswick for probably 60 years. I live in Sutton Court Road now. I wish I didn't. I absolutely look out the traffic every morning and think, What idiot is in charge of this? And tonight it's been demonstrated. Jefferson, you haven't got a clue. Really, if this...
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sir, you're being out of order. It is not a personal. Okay. It's not a personal. Oh, no, it's all right. It's all right. I understand.
I pay my council taxes.
Sorry, sir. Just I know. You retract that point. Yes.
If this was a
Yes.
shareholder company, you'd all be looking for a job because you made a mess of Chiswick, right? Absolutely.
I hear you. But let's not go into the personals. Yeah. Can you address those two questions, either of you first, and then we'll go back to that section there, please.
I'm not sure there were really questions, but happy to speak to them. So.
Thank you.
So on the first point, sorry, white jumper guy. Sorry, I'm struggling with what the questions were. Sorry, there wasn't a question.
Okay, fine. You're refusing to respond to your residents. Thank you.
No, I'm
all right,
happy
we'll
to
move on.
No, Chair, excuse me.
Sorry, are you gonna respond, or are you gonna?
Sorry, what was the question? Can you summarise the question?
He
for me?
he said that you are. He's ashamed to live on Sutton Court Road, and we are responsible for that as the council. And if he was working in a business environment, we'll all be sacked.
Okay.
So it's about service level agreement. So could you address that, please?
Well, I disagree. Okay. Yeah. So there's a. So okay, I'm very happy to address that point. Thank you for clarifying. Okay.
Thank you.
We've heard today several instances where the council has listened and has changed. You denied that, Chair, but it's not the case. That the council has listened and we have changed.
Excuse me.
We have
Sorry,
changed.
can I stop you there, please? I'll stop you there.
No.
I have not, sorry. And it's not a dialogue. Please turn the microphone off. Please turn the microphone off.
No.
Please turn the microphone off.
No, sorry, Chair. I am challenging you, Chair. You.
Sorry, if you don't, please turn the
Chair,
microphone off.
Chair,
Please.
you asked me to respond.
Please.
I am responding. Chair.
Turn the microphone
Chair,
off so I can make my point clear. Thank you. Okay. I have not denied that there are some elements of the council. I've spoken to Jefferson off from the meeting, and we've acknowledged that, including the CPZs and the home fields that was in the presentation. So you cannot deflect this on me. You are the decision maker. Rightly, you've come to answer the questions here. Please answer the questions from the audience.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
so
you.
There haven't been any questions, but I'm happy to talk to the points anyway. So there have been several instances mentioned tonight where the council has listened, has made changes based on what residents have said. You, Chair, did say we've been doing this for 4 years and nothing has changed. That's what I was referring to, okay? So I would dispute that. So the problem that we are trying to deal with is too much traffic. There is too much traffic in Chiswick. No. So can I...
Okay, thank you.
So this has been going on for a long time, and we know that the Chiswick High Road, for example, has been congested for many, many years. Prior to...
Okay, all right, I'll stop there.
It
Stop
is
there.
true, Joanna.
Sorry,
I've seen the pictures.
sorry. Can I stop there? Otherwise, we're going to... There's a gentleman... Sorry.
I didn't
sorry.
say it wasn't true. I said it's a Roman road. It's been
Catherine.
around for centuries.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Order. Oh, sorry. Can I ask the table, everyone to stop talking for a second? No, please.
Can
Thank
I
you.
continue?
No.
Why not? Sorry.
No, please.
Can I continue?
No, you cannot. Can you just turn that off for a second, please?
You asked me to address the audience's points, so
No,
I'd like to do that.
Hold on for 1 second. Can you please hold on for 1 second? Turn it off. Thank you. Okay. Hold on, whatever thought you have, just for now. The gentleman there is patiently waiting. Let him, 2 people ask a question, and then you can continue. Catherine.
Very simple question. Is it within the power of the council to sweep away all the changes it has made in Chiswick since the beginning of 2020, restore the status quo ante, and give Chiswick back to its residents? Is it within the council's...
Okay. Next.
Is it within the council's power to do that?
Okay, the gentleman at the back here made a point about Fisher's Lane, which was based on a falsehood. He said that the restriction at Fisher's Lane has caused gridlock there. Well, I can tell you it hasn't. There's been gridlock at Fisher's Lane because in the past, when it was open, cars couldn't get both ways through it. That always caused gridlock. And we know that gridlock has disappeared because of the data, because the 94 bus route runs along South Parade, and we know that bus running times have improved along that street. You can argue all you like, but the data is there. Yes, the data is there, and you can say what you like, but the data says the gridlock has got better along South Parade.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Behest and support.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Okay, everyone, just hold on 1 second. There are still items on the agenda that we need to cover. Ms. Rabin, I see you, I hear you, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. Yes, we're about to get to that question now. Now, wait a minute. We'll get to that question now. And Dr. Seaton, I see you as well. But Dr. Seaton, you're going to have a place here in a second, so don't worry about that. Can I ask Catherine and Jefferson to respond to the gentleman's question and also to the gentleman's opposing view? And well done for raising that as well, because there are different views in this borough that we need to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. So where we have experimental traffic orders in place, then the council will have to make a decision whether to reverse those, so go back to how it was before, or whether to make them permanent. And that includes some of the measures still in place in South Chiswick, and it includes Cycleway 9. Where measures have been made permanent, then if they were, in order to reverse those, then there would have to be a whole new process to start again. We couldn't just decide to go back because the decision has been already taken on those. On Fisher's Lane, yes, this is what the data is showing us.
Thank you very much. Councillor McGregor.
In the manifesto that we published for the May elections this year, we had an opportunity to reverse the schemes. Had we become the leading party in the administration. There is no legal barrier to making any changes that the council likes to make. There's no financial barrier because the reserves of the council, according to the Labour Party, are very high. Therefore, the answer is yes and yes in both circumstances. All we need to do is to vote people into power who actually understand what Chiswick's about. And that's your Conservative councillors.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Okay, so I live in the area, so I'm not just looking at data, it's lived experience, okay? I've been there 23 years, not as long as other people who have spoken. There were times when the traffic was bad. It was never bad enough to justify what you've done. Never. And that's 23 years of pushing children to stand on the Green School, St Mary's School, cycling, driving, walking, and every other form of transport. As someone who lives and is active in the community. Whatever we say tonight, we all know, and you know, because it's been said for a long time, and we have had discussions about this, you know exactly what the recurring issues are. We can't get visitors and carers and all sorts of things easily into our area. You know that. You've had many people write to you. You've had people who, the children can't go to brownies anymore because friends won't pick them up. You've got childminders who won't have packed in jobs in the area. You've got teachers, you've got the taxis, the list goes on. You know that is a problem. There is access to the area, which is all down Sutton Court Road. So if you're approaching the area from Kew Bridge, if you're lucky enough to live like I do in Strand-on-the-Green, you can nip down Thames Road. But nobody else can in Grove Park. So if I live anywhere beyond, you know, the train line and Annie's, although that 2-minute drive would make perfect logical sense, I have to go all the way along Chiswick High Road, either to the roundabout down the High Road, onto the A4, you know, down to the roundabout, back down Sutton Court. So that is the fact. That is the reality. Where else in this borough, where else in the country do you have to have protracted conversations with carers, your own family, your visitors, the plumber, the parish priest who, when he came to this parish, was late for mass by half an hour because he didn't know what the rules were? This is bonkers. Where else in the country do we have to do this?
Thank you. Okay, Jefferson.
Sorry, Ron, I will... That...
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
That is the major problem. There are many others, but that is the major problem. And you, who have created this, need to find us a solution. Because what you're saying is there isn't one. I've heard nothing since I've been a councillor, and it's only, it feels like forever, doesn't it? But it's only 6 months or so. There's no solution from your side as to what you are going to do to solve that problem.
Thank you. Jefferson, I will ask you to answer those questions of all the floor. No, sorry. No, excuse me. Can I finish? Can I finish, please? Jefferson, answer those 2 questions, and then we'll take a question from... Answer the... Sorry, excuse me. Jefferson and Councillor Dunn, you can answer those questions from the residents, and then I'll take a question from Ms. Rabin and this lady here who's had her hand up constantly, and then we're going to, what we do temporarily, just close off that section of the meeting. We reopen it up again after 5-10 minutes, okay, on that same point, okay? So we're going to just 2 more questions after Jefferson's answer, close temporarily that meeting, just to everyone... Just calm a little bit further, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, go on.
So if I could address Councillor Thompson's point first. I don't know where he's been, but these kinds of discussions are taking place up and down the country, and not least across London and in many other cities. And I'm sure you're aware of that, has been reported on. This is not the only place where a fractious meeting has taken place. I know of others that have taken place in the last few days in other parts of London. And the reason for that is not because the evil council is coming along trying to make people's lives more difficult. It's because we have big and serious issues that we have to address. And you know this, Councillor Thompson. You know, just the other day we were discussing at Cabinet, oh sorry, you weren't there, apologies, but you would have been aware that we were discussing at Cabinet about progress against our climate emergency. I'm sorry, it was a mistake, I wasn't having a dig. So we have these big issues that we have to address around climate, around air quality, around getting people more active. And so councils have moved to introducing a variety of different things. We are promoting cycling. We're building cycle lanes, not just C9. There's lots of other stuff going on in the borough, but C9 gets a lot of airtime, and I understand that, and I understand that the work has been disruptive. And lots of councils have brought in restrictions on residential roads, particularly during the pandemic, and we have done that too. And we haven't got everything right, and not all of them have been made permanent. changes have been made, and we are still listening, and we still have some decisions to make.
Thank you, Catherine. Please, Jefferson.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from Councillor Don's point. Firstly, I'd like to address, Chair, the gentleman on Sutton Court Road. I'm not entirely sure what he's referring to, because there is no scheme on Sutton Court Road. If he's referring to the disruption caused by the works on the A4, then I think, as I've explained earlier, it's not possible to carry out maintenance works of that nature without some disruption, and that will come to an end before Christmas. So I'm not entirely sure what he was referring to there. In relation to Councillor Thompson's point about the need or the case for change, I would respectfully disagree fundamentally. I don't think it is acceptable, as we had on Hartington Road, where you had 8,000 vehicles going through a residential road every day. That is not acceptable.
Okay.
After the closure of Hammersmith Bridge, sorry, I have to state that a lot of this has to come down to the fact that it's after the closure of Hammersmith Bridge that has resulted in increased traffic through Grove Park.
I understand. Guys.
And to not put it in that context is naive.
I understand, Councillor Giles. I know, I understand. But please, the lady is back. I see you as well. We still have an agenda to fulfill. Can you bear with me for just 10 minutes? I know we'll come back to this. Yes? Can you just bear with me? Okay, I have 2 questions from 2 ladies, and then we're going to have to go to the open forum shortly, where you can raise more of these questions. Please bear with me. Go ahead, Ms. Rabin.
I live in the ironically named South Chiswick livable neighbourhood. You've said that you're having things as trials, and at the end of the trials you'll do a consultation. Well, you've admitted that the consultations you just ignore, and you've shut Staveley Road as a permanent thing, you shut Hartington as a permanent thing. You've conceded to allow most of all the Chiswick Grove Park residents to use Hartington. You've conceded to allow all the Grove Park residents to use Staveley. You have refused to concede to allow all the Grove Park residents to use Thames Road access to go from Kew Bridge towards Brentford. You've refused to let Thames Road Grove Park residents use Harvard Hill, despite the fact you claimed rat runners were using it, and you've now shut all the rat runs. Why will you not reopen Harvard Hill? Why will you not reopen Thames Road to all Grove Park residents? Why have you put a permanent barrier down Staveley when you knew that you were going to proceed with Burlington Lane traffic trial? Why, Ealing Council you said you can't overturn your decision. Ealing Council overturned all bar 3 LTNs, one of which was at your insistence that it stays, which was Fishers Lane.
Thank you, Ms. Rabin. Thank you. Can we move on to another question? I think you've answered a lot of that question.
You're not listening.
Yeah. Last little point, and then I'm going to ask for Ollie to come forward.
Yeah.
And Dr. Seaton, you're after Ollie. Yeah.
I live in South Chiswick, in the livable neighbourhood, and I fully see that being a car driver in Chiswick is much less convenient and much more difficult to do. I am a car driver, but I've also started cycling more, and with my 2 young daughters, I am thrilled that South Chiswick is much easier to get about with my daughters on cycle and by walking. And for the future of Chiswick, and for the silent majority of Chiswick who do walk and do cycle, and please, no. We have so many students walking to school through the Grove Park neighbourhood, and it's so peaceful and so clean, and it is much better. And the car drivers have been very vocal tonight, but do consider that that these changes will benefit the climate and the air quality and the health of the younger generation. So I'm grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think the points have been raised. Now, if you bear with me, we will come back to some of these points. in a short break, in a short while. But before that, there's some really important items I want to cover in terms of what is happening with our markets, and this is going to be in an open forum. But we will come back to the transport issue. So, Councillor Dunn, do you mind staying on for another 15, 20 minutes, please? And sorry, just one point from Jefferson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for indulging me. I think it would be remiss of me not to address the point made about income from fines. Firstly, nobody gets a PCN unless they contravene the traffic restrictions in place. You don't contravene the restrictions, you don't get a PCN. Secondly, over 90% of PCNs issued were issued to people who do not live within the borough of Hounslow. That's what data we have proves. So it is simply not true that those schemes are there to fleece people. That's just completely wrong.
Okay, thank you. May I introduce the founding member of the Chiswick Flower Market, Ollie Saunders.
Hi. Thank you very much for the invitation to come and talk to you today, and now for something completely different. Sorry. Okay. So the vision for Chiswick was published back in January, and it highlighted as a key idea to have more community-led events and initiatives, including markets. Now, since the team, many of whom are here today, started Chiswick Flower Market back in September 2020, we've been joined by two other markets, our Cheesy Friends and the Antiques Market. And the Chiswick Flower Market team think that it would be good to start a conversation about markets in W4 and about what everyone thinks. Are they good for Chiswick and its businesses and residents? And if so, how can they be improved? But also, really to make sure there's a community view on the empty fourth Sunday market. Do we want another market? Okay. Do we want another market? And if so, what should it be? Now, we carried out some surveys. We did a visitor survey in August. We surveyed nearly 50 businesses, and also sent an online survey to our mailing list of locals. And we held a meeting in October where we showed the results, where councillors attended, and also published the surveys, which are all on our website, so do go and have a look at them. And if we do want a fourth market, can we get what W4 wants? So should we be proactive rather than reactive and community-led? But also there are things that we think could be done to improve the area, such as electricity, which is useful for a market operator, and also what we touched on earlier, trying to stop it flooding when it rains. Now I'm going to hand over to Karen, who's also explained some other things that we think we want to do to improve it.
Well, whether I stand or sit, you probably can't see me because Ollie's much taller. So I'm one of the co-founders of the Chiswick Flower Market, and I also, with another hat, run Abundance, which I've been doing for several years. So we started the market 2 years ago. It's right in the centre of Chiswick, and it's an important area, and it has been rather degraded. So maybe we don't notice it because we've got used to our Chiswick and how it runs, and it's a car park a lot of the time. So since we started the market, we've sort of looked at that as a centre and a core, and people come into it, and it has a different function from, it's beginning to revitalise. So we've done a few things already. We got rid of the air quality monitoring. I don't know if you remember, there was a huge blue container, so we've got rid of that. We replanted the flower beds, as a team with the money that we've raised from the flower market. This was last weekend's flower market, so the stalls had to go on the other side, part of the market, and on the other part of the market, they literally stood in it, ankle deep. Obviously, the leaves don't help, but it's not just the leaves. I mean, the road is bumpy. This is the old marketplace. If you can see at the front, there's a tree root. The parking places are actually no longer compliant. They're not big enough anymore. for the size of cars. So we wanted to look at that area and talk about what we could do with that area. Having seen that it can be a flower market, a cheese market, an antiques market, it can be something slightly more sparkly, as well as still providing the service, you know, that you can park in it as well. So we have a chance at the moment with the rebuilding of the police station. Most of us are not happy about losing the police from Central Chiswick, but it is what it is. And we have a new development coming there, which will be retirement villages, retirement flats. And there's something very exciting called CIL, which is money. So we have a chance to actually fund something, and we have a chance that all the flower market people live in Chiswick, and to do something that we want, not to denigrate the council with their, you know, Centre, Allies and Morrison's surveys and so on, but, you know, we would like to revitalise that area. So can I have the next slide, please? So, this is... Okay. Right, so this is the plans. They're on the Flower Market website. Where the wall runs along the edge, and that wall is falling, is bulging out, is being sort of stuck together. If you go and have a look at it, parts of it are bulging out, parts of it have crumbled already. Look at it with a new eye, and you'll see that it dates from the 70s and it's all falling apart. So the idea is to put rain gardens. So if you look where the people are standing would be the pavement along Chiswick High Road, and where the flowers are would be where that little wall is. And I think Tim, I don't know if he's gone home and given up the will to live. Oh, Tim, you're still here. Tim talked about suds and drainage and rain gardens. And this would be, as well as greening and improving biodiversity in our area, it would also suck up some water. So it would suck up some of that water that is sitting in big puddles. And it would also hold it for a little while so that it doesn't just mingle with our shit and go in the river.
Thank you. Karen.
So, yeah, I'm just finishing. Next one, please. That's the other thing, is to have a multi-purpose space that we could use for other things as well, if we wanted to have a concert, perhaps, or if we wanted to have a town, you know, a festivity for a coronation or a jubilee.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. Sorry, Karen. I'm really sorry.
That's it. Yeah. It's done. We want a civic centre that we should be proud of.
Thank you. And in the interest of fairness, I must admit that we will have a view from the other side on the cycling and transport issues shortly. But can I invite, please, Jackie Elton to respond with a slightly different look to it. Ollie, if you can stay around to respond.
Okay. Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I'm the chair of the Mid-Chiswick Society and the Friends of Chiswick Common, which is the area between Elliot Road and Fisher's Lane and round the Common. So we've been around for 45 years as an association. We're relatively active. I've also been in touch with the residents' associations of the Glebe Estate on the other side of Chiswick High Road, and with Ruler from the Linden Gardens Association. So we are the nearest residents' association close to the markets. I just want to say that none of our associations were ever formally invited to be part of any survey, nor have we been. So the surveys that have been talked about are really just surveys of sort of friends and fans, people who actually come to the markets. But obviously, you know, we represent people who don't necessarily come to the markets, but who just happen to live in the area. And, you know, we also, you know, need to get around on Sundays, and what we're finding is that we're sort of blocked in on a Sunday morning. So just going back to the survey, it was not an independent survey. It did not ask those who were simply local residents or traders. It's not that hard to do. We are around. And it didn't seem to take account of the different demographics, people with disabilities, people of certain ages, special needs. If it had been done as a planning application, it would have been very different. It would have been publicly advertised. And some very serious decisions are being put forward here about what we want to see about the High Road. And I think it's very important that we have a proper consultative process. Thank you. And just to give an idea of what different people do on a Sunday morning, they don't all go to markets. They go to church or other types of worship. They go to their allotments and take their tools. They get out in their cars. They go to different sports. They take their children, pick up other people's children to sports. They take stuff to the recycling centre. And they go to other markets. And so not everybody is using the markets. And I don't know if everybody really wants a fourth market. When this started, we were talking, I think, about the flower market. That's how I recall. There was going to be the one market. Now we've got the cheese market, the vintage market. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't want the markets, but I haven't heard it from the residents, and we need to have that conversation.
Last 30 seconds, yeah, or last 10 seconds, sorry, should we say?
So the other point is parking. Linden Gardens have now got Sunday restricted parking. We've just heard that East Chiswick has now getting restricted parking. I can tell you that my residents want restricted parking. If that happens, where's everybody going to park? If they take out the extra spaces, where is everybody going to park on a Sunday? Thank you,
Jackie. Thank you. I would like to invite Ollie to make a comment on that, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Seaton to come back here, and we'll retrieve back to the traffic and transport.
Thanks, Jackie. And that's exactly why we want to start a conversation. So the cheese market and antique market are separate organisations. An application could be made for a fourth market, and we think it's important that we get on the record what Chiswick's views are and what the residents of Chiswick want. We responded to your email, Jackie, about the survey. We omitted in our meeting, it's an online survey to people that join our mailing lists. We wanted to put it out there. We would welcome more surveys. We think it's important that we do have that conversation, and we have corresponded on email about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have a solution. That's brilliant. So we're going to bring the two groups together and hopefully get a survey that we can all agree on. So thank you so much for reaching out, both of you. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
And please download this document's on the website, and it's got every response on it. So do have a look and email us back. Thanks. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I introduce Dr. Ed Seaton?
Hi, thanks very much, Councillor Moshiso. So I'll be fairly quick, and I'd just like to say something. Then, if I can maybe ask through you a question to the councillors, if that's permissible. So I just wanted to speak up on behalf of the hundreds of people in Chiswick who think the cycle lane is an absolutely brilliant idea, and the thousands of people in Chiswick who actually quite like it or really are not that bothered by it at all. There are some people I'd like to mention. My 13-year-old daughter, who is now able to cycle to her school in Hammersmith twice a day with lights on in the winter, which she would not have been able to do before. And she does that with tens of her friends every day. My wife, who's a consultant at Charing Cross Hospital, who in 2020 was knocked off her bike on King Street, destroying her bike, who's now able to cycle on the cycle lane. I had a text today from a friend of mine called Madeline, who talked about her mother, Claire Stevens. If you permit me, she said, "Hi, Ed, and anyone else going to the meeting tonight. In case it's a useful example, my 85-year-old mum is worried about the cycle lane being endangered by this meeting. The cycle lane has been transformational for her. She's pretty wobbly on the bike and can't walk and no longer drives, so the lane has really been liberating, and she uses it for shopping on the high road and towards Hammersmith, and as part of a route to Charing Cross Hospital, I think. I'll be picking her up from the hospital this evening, so neither of us will be able to make it. Many thanks for those who are attending." I think there have been a lot of people who use the cycle lane every day who have not made this meeting, so I'd like to say something on behalf of them. This is an official government document published by the Department for Transport last year, Gear Change, the Conservative Party, and it talks about active travel, and it talks about the expectation that councils of all colours deliver more cycle lanes and low traffic neighbourhoods and school streets. And it states there is now clear evidence that these schemes work and are popular. You wouldn't think that tonight, would you? It then goes on to talk about how cycling and walking schemes can create passionate opposition, as we can see today, but there is now clear evidence that neither the opposition nor the passion, I'm guilty of that, reflect public views. Multiple independent professional polls over the last year and the government's own polling and survey show consistent public support for the measures that councils have taken. Most people do not feel strongly about these schemes. Only a very small minority expects strong opposition, typically between 7 and 15% of overall respondents. So it's not so much one Chiswick as probably 1/10 Chiswick, really. So I would like, just to finish, but if I could maybe ask, if you don't mind, Councillor Moshiso, the councillors what they think of this document, what the councillors of both colours think of the expectation that, that specifically in Chiswick, that cycle lanes and low traffic neighbourhoods are delivered, and also that it says that the government expects that the schemes, namely C9, will remain in place and the schemes be given time to bed in, and that a professional representative polling, in other words, phoning people up for polling company that genuinely reflects local opinion is used to assess them. Thank you. I have to say, I thought people in Chiswick were quite polite until tonight.
They are.
And there have been various people that have been
Dr.
shouting all
Dr.
evening,
Seaton,
including officers.
Dr. Seaton,
So,
Dr. Seaton, I think they are polite, but bear with me one second. In fact, Dr. Catherine Dunn, do you mind having a response to Ed's comments first? And then we're going to go to some questions in the audience. I've got some names here. Iris Hill. Iris, yeah.
Okay, so yes, Ed, thank you very much. It's a very interesting document, and you won't be surprised to know that I do agree with a lot of what it says in there. And we are going to continue to promote cycling and walking and public transport across the borough. And it's not just in Chiswick by any means. There are places in the borough that are much less well connected with Chiswick, and we need to introduce schemes, and have done, and in those areas as well. But yes, the government is right to have an expectation on councils, as it does, to promote walking and cycling and to reduce air pollution, and to play our part in addressing the climate emergency. And that will only come through reducing the number of cars and the number of car journeys on our roads. And so to me, it's incredibly important that we continue to promote these in conjunction with local people, but standing by those aims and expectations that are placed upon us.
Thank you, lead member. Can I go to Iris Hill first? Yeah, we will come back to that as well. Yeah.
So, Ronnie, he did ask, I suppose,
Yeah.
both sides to comment.
I did try to catch an eye. No one actually looked at me, so bear with me.
I've got mine now.
No, bear with me. I'll come back to you. Okay. I'll go to Iris Hill first.
Okay, thank you.
And then hold your thought.
I live near Harvard Hill, and I'm a driver and a pedestrian, and I don't cycle. And I was wondering, actually, if we could get the air pollution statistics before and after the closure of Harvard Hill, but maybe that's not possible. But I did want to say that prior to the closure, rat runners used to come up Burnaby Gardens and St Mary's Grove during the rush hours and meet in the middle of Wolsey Gardens, with queues going right back to Gordon Road and beyond. If there was a problem on the A4, these cars were stationary, with the exhaust belching fumes and sound systems blaring. And when cars came from